all parts of the world and everybody who's joining me today.
Good morning.
I want to.
Good morning.
Well, let's do this. Before we even get into the subject matter, what I'll tell people is everybody saw from the title, America versus South America before the recession, because we saw an article in the New York Times that said the U.S. should act before a global downturn destabilizes Latin America. Downturn meaning recession. And I wanted to talk to a few people who live in different areas south of the equator, not necessarily even just South America, because there are a lot of sides to this issue. And of course, I have a lot of friends with a lot of international experience. So first, I'm going to let everybody introduce themselves. And we're going to start out with Durval, because I think he's the newest face. Tell us who you are. Don't be shy. Don't let your history be a mystery. Tell them who you are and why you're amazing and some of the things you've done.
First of all, thank you, Brother Yusef, for the warm welcome. My name is Durval. My nickname is Dury. I'm connecting from São Paulo, Brazil. And I am a 57-year-old English teacher in town, and I'm a former U.S. government employee. And I'm thrilled to be invited for this, meeting. Have a chance to meet brothers and sisters from other places, and I'm all set to go. That's
wow.
it.
That was okay. He's done a lot more than that. Tell him about your books.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm a writer. I'm also a writer. I have just, in 2014, I launched my first fiction called O Último Negro, which is in Portuguese. The title in English would be The Last Negro. You know, it's diasporical and very broad fiction with a very interesting plot. And I'm about to launch my second book called the Enigma Ashanti, the Ashanti Enigma, which is also a diasporic African oriented book. And I'll spread the words to you guys when the launching is ready to go. I'll let you all know about it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Dear Sister Roxanne, we miss you. We always miss you.
Thank you, Yusef, always for the opportunity. My name is Roxana Bangura, and I live in Veracruz, Mexico with my daughter, my Ashanti daughter. We've been here, my Ashanti daughter. Yes, her father is Ashanti from Ghana. We've been here about 2.5 years, and I moved here so that my daughter could be fluent in Spanish. It's an important language in the Americas. It's an important language in the United States. I would say it's the second language of the United States. Also, there's just more opportunities for me to do more for her here because of the cost of living. So a lot of it is because of my daughter. And then for myself, I write the Bangura Chronicles online on Patreon. I have a Facebook page, and I have the Roxana Bangura channel on YouTube. And I also teach here at a local university. I teach business English here. So that's me in a nutshell.
Brother Jeremy, back again.
Hey, thanks for having me. First off, I'm from Barbados, and I am a lecturer, or what people would call a professor, in the United States of America in finance and economics. I am relatively well known throughout the Caribbean for advocacy, economic advocacy, policy development. I do some advisory work with governments across the region as well, and the sub-region. When I say sub-region, English speaking primarily. Travel quite a bit, and a very central part of my well-being is, and my goal for myself, or my vision for myself, is sharing my knowledge quite openly with persons, looking to help persons, particularly in areas such as wealth creation, economic enfranchisement, and more so importantly, just general self-awareness as a people. When I say people, it doesn't necessarily mean race, but rather a culture. It's something that Yusef and Naive knocked heads on, where he thinks they should think much bigger than that. But I'm surrounded by my reality on a daily basis, and ironically, I feel more compelled to push Caribbean first, globally second, which might not be the best thing, but it's something I feel strongly aligned with.
Wait, is somebody boiling tea in the background?
Not me.
Definitely not me.
Not
God,
you.
Well, okay, I want to kind of go left on this because, excuse me, I shouldn't say left or right because that could have a little political undertone to it. I had a problem with the entire premise of the article before we even get to what the United States could do or if they could do it. The question that I keep coming back to is, are we prepared again to intervene in other people's business? I mean, the unfortunate reality is we talk about should America intervene? What happens when anyone intervenes in a country that's not their own? And I say this as a proud American. I love America. But I also know the consequences can go in two directions. It could be yeah, we intervene. The United States government says there is a recession coming in the United States, so we need to do something for other countries in Latin and South America. And forgive me, I'm going to use those two phrases interchangeably because Brazil calls people, they tell people if you ask them on a quiz, are they Latin? Yes. Are they Latin people? No. They don't share any Latin culture. They don't expose any Latin values, but they'll say it on a quiz just so they don't appear a little high and mighty about it. It's hilarious. But I want to go with, at what point does the United States say maybe if there is a recession, we should simply consistently focus inward? Not that the world is a small place like it used to be, but should they consistently intervene? Now, yes, it's actually going to be our fault because the United States catches a cold, the world catches a flu. But how many times can you stick your finger in a hole to watch another one pop up? When we could be, and I'm not going to say a phrase that came to mind, but when we could be minding it inward. And I'm not going nationalist. I'm not saying, any of that nonsense, but where does it end? Anybody.
Well, I think it's always been the policy of the United States to stick its nose in everyone else's business. We know that they've done that in Central America. And my point of view is that this is why there's a lot of instability in the region. We know that, during the 80s with Nicaragua and Reagan and all of those actors, how they destabilized the region. We can even extend it to Haiti. So we know that's always been the policy of the United States. And then now, the last 25 years or so, we've been in the Middle East with all this Iran, Iraq, and all these other places, Afghanistan. So that's always been the policy of the United States. It's nothing new. And now the latest thing is that Trump said that he was going to send migrants to El Salvador. And, El Salvador, has very close ties to the United States. They use the American dollar. So does Panama. So I just think it's always been the case. That's what the United States has always done. And I don't know if we can continue to do it. I think definitely, China has a lot of influence now, but I just don't see this being anything new with the United States and sticking their nose in other people's government's business.
I didn't know they used it. Wait, they use the American dollar where?
In El Salvador.
El Salvador, we do, yeah.
I did not know that.
Yes.
Yeah. And if I'm not mistaken, also in Honduras as well, they do it too.
Yeah, maybe. But I know in El Salvador, I had friends from there and they use the dollar. Yeah. El Salvador is expensive. So, and to stabilize the region, my stance is, people will leave. They will leave to seek greener pastures. And that's never going to stop, wall or no wall. People, where there's a will, people will find a way. And it's not just people coming from these regions. You have people coming as far as West Africa, going through Southern and Central America, walking through Mexico, trying to get to the United States or trying to get to Canada. So that human flow will never stop, no matter what's going on. If you think something is greener on the other side, you're going to go. And America, Trump is just, anyway, we know about Trump. It's so embarrassing talking to him up here. I'm so embarrassed.
If we talk about China, we know we have a trade war going on, right? So my other question is, and I have a friend from an African nation who said, often what will happen is this. If you're not from a powerful country, you have to essentially choose a big brother. Now, if the United States doesn't want to be your big brother, that doesn't leave you with very many other options. It might end up becoming China or it might end up becoming Russia. So often the United States feels like if we do have this recession, we got to intervene in other countries, because what happens if someone with a different accent comes and says, hey, I'll take care of things for you?
Yeah, it actually lies a bit deeper than that, in my view. It's interesting that you said earlier in your opening monologue, Yusef, that maybe Americans should consider inward policy, dealing with stuff domestically first. And ironically, a lot of the moves to intervene in other states' affairs have pretty much historically meant protecting the interests of America with respect to the domestic economy. So, so wars, for instance, any war the U.S. has entered into has actually always met an economic turnaround. If you look at the Gulf War in the early 1990s, I was in primary school then. Definitely, America came out of the savings and loans crisis, a lot of it being driven by that war, although people don't relate to it. If you look at the dot-com bust in the late 1990s, and then just after September 11th, and the move to go into the Middle East, then you had an unprecedented time, yes, based on monetary policy, but also based on just massive government investment through contractors and other places that drove a lot of growth in America. People don't speak about that side of the economy. And funnily enough, we can go as far back as the World War II. The American economy was languishing in between the 20s, coming out of the Great Depression, going into the 40s. World War II was the major turnaround point. So foreign policy in the States is to me less about control.
It's actually said that the United States didn't become the United States until World War II. That's when we became what we are.
United. Yeah. And ironically, I mean, if you just look at the history, it's as clear as day that U.S. policy is less about control. Yeah, it is involving control, but more about ensuring that the economy works, that the American economy works. And that's been the view of a lot of economists.
Controlling the money is the only control that really matters.
Yeah, but remember too, right? All right, let me show you something about money. As you know, money is just a concept more than anything else. And the fact that you have a lot of American dollars in circulation globally, right, means one thing and one thing alone, that there's a lot of room for imports or exports into countries that use the US dollar. So most Caribbean countries, for instance, are pegged to the US dollar simply because we have to trade with the US. It makes no sense trading with Europe. And we're not only forging links with the countries around us that speak Spanish, and in addition, Brazil. There's not much trade going on there. If we were pegged to another currency, then it would make a lot more sense for us to do business elsewhere. So at the end of the day, it's all about mass wealth, just growing more and more wealth and control, in my view. And one can't happen without the other. You must control in order to influence, and then to influence means you then have economic benefit. That's what destabilization does.
Bro, you just used a powerful word, destabilization. That's a whole nother bowl of rice right there. Let me back up. Daniel, welcome.
Hi. Thank you for having me on.
You're always welcome. I don't know if anyone here had the opportunity to see what Daniel and I chatted about the other day. He came on and we had a really good conversation that we just had to quit because we said, listen, we're going to go forever. But he's someone who, well, tell him a little bit about who you are and where you are in your story. I don't want to steal your sunshine. Don't be modest.
Okay. Well, my name is Daniel Oliver, and I'm from Texas, but I've been living abroad a lot most of my adult life. And right now I'm actually located in Lahore, Pakistan. But what Yusef and I were talking about was this status of African-American refugee or asylum seeker, and whether and how that could be justified, as well as what it means, where would you go, how would you actually make that work? I mean, it's one thing to just claim that you are that, it's another thing to, you know what I mean, like make it successful. So yeah, that's kind of been on my mind a lot lately.
For everybody, I want you to go back and look at this. YusefWateef and Daniel, American refugee in Pakistan. I want everybody. look at that later.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Interesting.
Mhm. Well,
Okay.
I read in the article, it was an opinion piece in the New York Times. The U.S. should act before a global downturn destabilizes Latin America. Um, Jeremy Stephen was actually, I think he really broke down like the economist side of it, because a lot of people don't know what money actually is. You know what I'm saying? It's it's not just like, it's a tool. You know what I'm saying? It can be used for so many things. You would think some kind of way that printing more money decreases the value of each dollar, as if the number of printed dollars in the world is known. People got printing plates in and out of the United States. There's no telling how much money is anywhere, because it's not about counting it and dividing it and pegging it to something. It's basically, like if someone lives off their reputation, why would you take person number one's word over person number two's word? There's something intangible that has a value that you can even use in exchange. Or just to say, you know what, I don't want to go against it. Like the Caribbean states do so much trade with America, and they do so little with, I think you said Spanish-speaking countries in Brazil, that money actually has a hold on them. Like those dollars have a
Yep.
hold on them. You know
Yep.
what I'm
It
saying?
does.
There's conspiracy theories galore, from, buying silver, pegging the silver, all the way to, countries trading outside of the US dollar, and how difficult it is, because
You speak
it's
blasphemy.
in their coding. It's in their coding like Y2K. You can't
Here's
even
the thing, though.
try to do trade with countries without a dollar, because it's built into every single process.
Daniel,
Computers are designed with that in it.
on that one, I got to give you some pushback, because as someone who's
Yeah.
been heavily involved in cryptocurrency for a little over
Uh-huh.
8, I can tell you, cryptocurrency fills holes that people don't even know exist, and it is
Really.
it is something that I've had many discussions on here on the channel. If anyone ever wants to go back and look at any of the things we talked about cryptocurrency, I can tell you it matters, and it has mattered for me, and it matters in the grander scheme of things. I've got a playlist called Money is Everything, and I want you to, if anybody go back, look into some of the cryptocurrency things. Brother Jeremy and I had a couple of exciting conversations about cryptocurrency, and we both walked away enlightened. Is that a fair statement?
Okay.
It's a fair one. It's a fair, but to add something to what you're saying, Yusef. No, the reason Yusef is laughing is because I share a slightly divergent view with respect to crypto, but not necessarily a negative one, because I was heavily involved, and a great part of my wealth came out of being involved in cryptocurrencies rather early, right? But the thing I want to say, Daniel, based on the US dollar, it's losing its hold in a lot of countries strategically. A lot of it has something to do with China, right? You know, I am quite sure, because you're in Asia, some people consider Asia, you must have been sure, or at least aware of what the Chinese have been doing with respect to having countries in that region replace their pegs, or to at least top up their reserves with Chinese renminbi, right? So, or yuan. Indonesia, for instance, hardly uses US dollars now. Ironically, as an oil-based nation, it hardly uses it. Russia and China would have had a huge currency swap about 4 years ago, 3-4 years ago, in tens of billions of dollars, which has basically opened up the floodgates for trade between the two countries. Between the two countries, that does't necessitate any use of the US dollar at all. And slowly but surely, a lot of Eastern Africa too are going in that direction, because of the massive amount of investment that China's been placing into that sub-region as well. And ironically, you know, you will see a case more and more that more countries are going to reduce their dependency on the US dollar. The question is then, how does then the US adapt their foreign policy in the face of that? That is the one I've had trouble thinking about, because then does it mean that you go through purposeful destabilization, Does it mean that you have a more aggressive trade war as a result?
Right.
And therefore destabilizing China a bit, although it's becoming increasingly difficult to do so? Or does it mean that you go on a feel-good campaign, probably through the IMF, and offer
I
very
wonder if
cheap loans to
China
countries?
knows that with Trump, they're finding someone who can destabilize themselves, like an enemy that can sabotage itself. Because
Yep.
if China
Yep.
is somehow involved, sorry, go ahead.
No. I'm agreeing with you. I think that's their view. They're
I mean,
boxing with kid gloves with him.
I think that they're playing chess while he's playing checkers because destabilization of Latin American economy, with 1/3 of Latin Americans currently saying, according to this opinion piece, that they would like to migrate. So that number could go up to above 1/3, right? 2/5, who knows?
Right.
That's only going to affect the United States and cause, instability in the United States, which strengthens China's hand and position, its reputation, everything. And maybe they said our prayers have finally been answered when this guy started doing this trade war. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, I
That
want
is
to
my view.
for a second. I want to go down a lane. First, by the way, let me say hello to T. Kelly. First live, come to learn something new and see Yusef brush his cool mustache. Flattery will get you everywhere. Flattery will get you everywhere. But thanks for doing this. And what I will tell everybody watching is the two things I'll ask you to do is make sure you click the like button and share this somewhere. Click the link, pop it into your Facebook or pop it into your Instagram or your Twitter or wherever you do social media and just say, hey, check these guys out. And I really appreciate that you said you came to learn something. That means we have the responsibility.
Well, excuse me, Yusef, where should I click?
Oh, hold on. I said I tagged you on Facebook, and that's the one you share. You share.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I see it.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. And Jeremy, you said, how does the United States, I don't want to misquote you, did you say compose itself in the face of, let me back up for one quick second. First, Lillian, did you see the article that we were talking about? That's the article that we were talking about, the one that I sent a link to. I hope that everybody gets a chance to check it out. If anybody, and shout out to Lillian because she actually had a great conversation with dear brother Jeremy here. So she's got a nascent channel going. I hope everybody gets a chance to pop it on hers, Miss Lillian Kettles. But
Hi,
that's the
Lillian.
article
How are you doing?
that we were talking about. So, Jeremy, you said, how does the United States reconfigure its foreign policy? Help me out here. I want to go back to that because I think I understood, but I want to make sure.
All right. No, I'm just saying that in the face of China growing its influence westward, I gave some examples of how it's been able to convince countries to depend more on its currency as basically a reserve currency of sorts. And that's heading eastward into Africa and whatnot, Eastern Africa right now in particular. And Eastern Africa stretching from as far north as Ethiopia all the way down to not necessarily South Africa, but Zimbabwe for sure. So you've got that influence that they're growing over there. And as a result,
and they're in the West
US,
and Central too.
Yeah, I agree. But I meant in terms of staunch influence, it's moving westward. It's moving westward for sure because the stories I'm hearing are immense. But you can see within probably 2-3 years that basically all of Africa might decide, let's conduct our trade primarily through China or directly with China and eschew the need to use US dollars. I established earlier, again, you don't have to agree, but I established earlier that there's a link between currencies or the US having its currency everywhere and the influence that it has and the need for it to interfere in foreign policy, right? That's my staunch belief. So the question is that if you take away that currency, if you take away the influence that they can have through currency, tying a country to trade with it, then and China, sorry, takes over in that position, how does the United States adjust in that condition? That's my question. And I have never been able to settle on one thought about it.
And nobody, that's the problem. Nobody knows, because no one alive now remembers what it was like to have a time when they were still fighting for a place on the global importance list.
Fair point. Or you can look at what's happening with Brexit. The United States could implode just like how England is imploding right now. England still believes that it has importance in the world, you know. And the only big part of England that really matters is, yes, its influence in finance, particularly foreign currency trade. But otherwise, England doesn't have any global influence. If England dropped off the map tomorrow, yeah, there's a lot of loss in terms of asset wealth, but people wouldn't necessarily go hungry. However, if the United States disappeared tomorrow, everybody goes hungry. If China disappears tomorrow, everybody doesn't go hungry, but surely everybody would be inconvenienced in terms of technology and other things. So, if you see, I feel as though, and I will hope that history proves me wrong, that this could be a point of implosion in the United States. The rise of populism in the States, for instance, makes me believe that. This reminds me of things I've seen as far back as around the time of Rome, post Caesar, and how it imploded.
Wow. Did you just say, wait a second, did you just say post Caesar? Like, that's
yeah. But no, like what I'm seeing right now reminds me of the Roman Empire, literally post Caesar, the rise of populism, right? I'm going to say this because I'm not American. Basically, having a clearly unfit leader, right? You had a string after Caesar being the last great four emperors. They had four great emperors in a row, and then everything just went to haywire. They had lazy emperors. They had emperors that seconded rule to the Senate, clear rule to the Senate. Then you had dictators emperors that clearly didn't know what they were doing, and that led to the demise of the Roman Empire. That is England. That has been England the past 20 years, believe it or not. And no,
you know, when I lived in London well over a decade ago. But one of the things that I got to see is have friends who talk about England's demise in the context of the post-Thatcher era. And
everything past Thatcher, everything post-Thatcher has been against England, except for probably Tony Blair for a bit. But every prime minister they've had has literally led them to the point they're at right now. And I lived there, as you would know. I went to school in England. A good bit of my education was in England, and it was interesting to just see how, like, from the time Gordon Brown became prime minister, how things became more insular, particularly given England's place in the EU and migration patterns and all that stuff. But the point being is this: I mean, for me, and I don't want to be dreary because my country depends on the United States of America being healthy. You know, from a trade perspective, but not necessarily from a revenue making perspective. We make most of our money with our European connections, right? Mainly UK, the same UK. And
let me back up for a second, because I am interested in what you're saying, but I also want to get two divergent opinions from two different places.
Go ahead.
Reverse for Daniel. If the United States hit a massive recession, how does it affect where you are? And tell everyone again where you are in case they forgot. And who has a dog that needs someone's dog needs to be cuddled? If not, mute yourself so you don't have to hear.
Sorry, what did you say?
I said someone's dog needs to be cuddled because they're barking. So if it's in your house, whoever it is, just mute until you're talking.
No, I don't have a dog. Okay, basically, the Pakistani rupee is not pegged to the dollar, but it is a weak currency in the sense of it has been weakening. Pakistan has a lot of debt. Now, a strengthening of China's hand or a weakening of the American dollar doesn't cause a big difference over here, because Pakistan is one of many Asian and extra Asian countries that is in China's sphere. You know what I'm saying? So all their development and construction, the raw material, the access to finance, stuff like that, that's really dependent on China. So the way we see it, we know what is going on in the United States, but we don't think about it as much as in China. So China is putting fellow Muslims in concentration camps, like the Uyghur Turkic minority in Turkestan. But nobody here is really tripping about that. Certainly not like at the political level, right?
The only reason I even know who Uyghurs are is I spent 2 years living in China, so I understand a tiny bit more than the average American because China is such an enormous planet, as I like to refer to it. My own experience with the Muslim community there was, I'll tell you something interesting. As an atheist who believes in never bashing anyone else, Muslim food is really good. Really good.
That's probably, I don't want to sound racist, but that's probably the most white thing I've ever heard you say.
Well, I mean, listen, I know that I go to a new country.
But no, you don't know how they barbecue, man. You don't know how they smoke it.
The barbecued lamb that the Muslim Chinese would cook. Oh my goodness!
Trust me, dude. Trust me, Jeremy.
Roxana, I'm with you, Roxana. I'm with you, Roxana.
Wait, but
I'm with you, honestly.
Maybe I've been out here too long, but
Roxana, I'm with you too, Roxana.
Wait.
What did he say?
No, it was Roxana. Roxana was looking at you.
Because I said barbecued lamb?
No, it was a divergent. It was like really divergent just now. That's all.
Yeah, you're like, as an atheist, I like the lamb. We was like,
One thing I always put forward is I don't ever want anyone to misinterpret and believe I'm cheering for anyone's team.
Oh, okay.
Well, look at it this way. I was in Saudi Arabia. All right. I was in Saudi Arabia. Here's a parallel example.
I'm glad to hear that. What Yusef said.
Wait, say that again.
Okay.
No, I'm totally with you. I'm down to you on that too. You know,
gotcha.
I agree with what you said.
I apologize. Let me give the microphone back to you, Daniel.
Okay, well, I was in Saudi Arabia when there was an economic crisis in the U.S. or worldwide, let's say 2008, around that time. It didn't really affect the oil price, so it didn't really affect anything.
Oops.
Yeah.
He's gone?
Oh, okay.
Where he was going is a fair argument. I'll wait to hear more for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's a very fair argument.
Let me go to the other side. Roxana, in Mexico, do you see a very direct correlation between the health of the United States government and the city you're in Mexico?
No, not where I am. Those things tend to happen more at the border. The only thing I will say is we do have some American businesses here. We have factories here, and we have individuals who work for the factories, and a lot of it is akin to slave labor. I mean, that might be an extreme analogy, but just that people work extremely long hours for extremely low pay right here in this little town. I'm in a small town, and that's what I've noticed. But a lot of that stuff happens at the borders, both borders, at the south, you know, where people come in through Guatemala, at the southern border of Mexico, and as well as the northern border with the United States. And also dollars are used at the northern border. So places like Tijuana, which is right outside of San Diego, their dollars are used there. So, you know, it's really felt more so at the border. Here, not so much in the middle of the country. I'm in the central southern part of the country. And the only thing that we see that's very impactful is American factories, American businesses. We have, well, Bayer is German. Heineken, I guess, is also European. But we do have other factories here locally that's affected by America, or that we feel the effects of the United States.
Sorry, Roxana, excuse my ignorance, right? Would you say you're closer to Mexico City than you are to, say, the United States border?
Yes, I'm about 4 hours away from Mexico City, and I'm about a 24-hour drive away from the border of the United States with, I guess, Texas, because I'm more closer to Texas. Yeah.
Okay.
So it'll take like a day to drive to Texas.
So you're far from Tijuana per se.
Oh, I'm very far from Tijuana. Yes.
Okay.
Tijuana. Yeah.
Mhm.
Wow.
Okay.
And
Yeah, I asked that for sure. I needed to know because of I'm sorry, Yusef. When you say that there was little dependency on U.S. influence in terms of economic influence, I figured, man, there must be some strong regional center that's nearby. The strongest one I could think about is Mexico City with its huge population.
I
And
do want to
sorry.
say, I know a lot of deportees, self-deported as well as government deported. So I do encounter that. I mean,
Okay.
90% of the time, people I've worked with, if they themselves haven't been deported, their relatives have. So you do feel that there's a little bit, never animosity, but it's something that I don't like to talk to individuals about their status too much, because a lot of people are regretful that they're back in this area. They wish they were still back in the United States.
you know, something I can ask is, why did you come to Brazil? But we have to also remember, as Americans with an American education, some of the things that we have, we can go places that to other people they can't extract any value from, and we can, because we have different tools. Derval, you know, one of the reasons I definitely wanted you here, I remember telling you on the phone yesterday, I said, I'm in Brazil. Brazil. I'm going to become Brazilian at some point when I can just get this language thing down. One thing I will never allow myself to do, because I've seen so many people around the world do it, I'll never allow myself to believe that I can speak for Brazil. I will always be an American who made a home in Brazil, and I never want to be so arrogant as to believe I could gauge the weather not having lived here. So I wanted you to be here. You know, and what do you see when you look at the relationship between the Brazilian economy and the United States economy? How do you see it going if the United States does catch that cold of a recession?
Okay, so that's a pretty good question. I would say that historically speaking, we have been kind of, put apart from the U.S. because before this Bolsonaro bullshit, excuse my French, we have been having for the last months.
Oh God.
We had this leftist government in power. And because of that, our relationship, even in trade and politically speaking, was kind of cold with the United States. Since Bolsonaro took over the government, and knowing that he's a rightist and a conservative representation of what's this new rightist wave that we have been seeing the world lately, the chances are that we're going to have a better relationship with the United States from the political perspective. But this is just from the government. The overall population of Brazil don't agree with what's going on. The same feeling of frustration that the American population is having with Donald Trump reflects on the overall feeling that the average Brazilian people and voters feel about Bolsonaro. My belief and my understanding of this scenario is that going back to the 60s, John Kennedy said that the United States don't have friends, they have interests. So knowing that we have this pre-salt layer and we have the Amazon forest and all the natural resources and everything, we have this huge aquifer in some part of the underground of Brazil with water, clean water enough to supply clean water for the world for the next 100 years or so.
Really?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
No, you need to send me some research on that. I want to know more.
Okay,
Please.
we can talk about
sorry,
that.
go ahead.
No, it's okay.
Yeah.
So I don't believe that this proximity between Brazil and the U.S., this recent approach that they have to each other, from the political spectrum down to the economical and social whatsoever, is going to be something permanent as long as Trump and Bolsonaro are in power. This relationship will endure. But after that, and if we have some kind of change in the political spectrum of Brazil and the United States, as the predictions tell us, maybe we're going to have some change in the near future regarding this so-called friendship that's going on between Brazil and the U.S. Now, But again, this is just my personal perspective. Things may change. Who knows? Let's see what happens. Let's see what's gonna happen in the next 2 or 3 years.
I don't know if does Brazil receive a lot of aid from the United States?
No, not exactly. No, no. We know we are the ninth or 10th strongest economy in the world, and I have to confess that Lula government did a hell of a job with our economy, in the last 10 or 15 years or so. You
Yeah.
know, and our dependence on American trade diminished a lot in the last 10 years. We are pretty much self-sufficient in oil production and all kinds of stuff. But I'm afraid to say that corruption, as we know, is a big issue in Brazilian administration. And let's see what's going to happen. But to answer your question, no, we don't have that much dependence. As you guys know, we had this trading bloc involving Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa called
Those are
the
all the BRICS
BRICS.
countries, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yeah, the
BRICS,
BRICS.
yeah.
But that didn't work out as we expected, and I'm afraid to say that probably this trade bloc will split, or if they haven't. So people will have Brazil will have to learn how to walk with its own legs because things didn't work out as they expected. Thank you, brother Yusef. That's what it is, and you should include South Africa there too. So
Yes.
from BRIC it became BRICS. Yeah,
Yeah.
there you go.
Ha! There we go.
There you
Oh
go.
yeah,
Yeah.
I remember you guys had that clever little Lotus logo. That was so awesome.
What was that again?
The Lotus logo.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, but believe me, this is just a name, just an anagram, or whatever you call it, because in fact, this trade block never really worked out as they expected.
Well, there are two ways that I want to go with that. One is a little more lighthearted. You see that lotus flower design? Does anyone living in China, do you know why the lotus flower is such a popular logo?
Huh.
The lotus isn't just beautiful on top. The lotus flower is famous because the lotus flower can survive in any environment. It can grow in places other flowers can't and still be beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Lotus flowers can be grown in places that other flowers are just incapable of and still maintain their beauty. So that's a very interesting thing. And I said, okay, Adrian said yes in that order. The other thing I wanted to go to was when we talk about trading blocks, when we talk about groups of interest, I don't know that the world will ever go back to a situation where we can live regionally, where we can live in a situation we can say our partners happen to be our next door neighbors. You know, the internet did a lot of interesting things. We talk about how it brought the world together, but it brought it apart. In one of the discussions I had about being a prepper, I tell people being a prepper isn't just about having a jug of water and knowing how to get out of your house in an emergency. Being a prepper is saying, do I know all the neighbors on my street? Do I know all the neighbors on my left, right, and across the street, left and right? Most people don't. Part of being prepared for anything. Is that my imagination? Does anyone else hear that?
Yeah, I
I
hear
can hear it
some.
too.
I hear some.
Sounds like a drill gun. Sounds like a drill gun.
Somebody's drilling in a painting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hear that
Drill
too.
gun, yeah.
What I was going to say is that are we past the point in history where we can make allies just because people are near us or speak a similar language or even have the same skin hue? Because the internet has put us in a situation where our economies can be intertwined with people in places we've never seen before. And as someone who travels the world, I've seen some of the most strange bedfellows, like the United States in the internet having a huge base in tiny Eastern European, semi-Russian countries where they don't even speak English because they learn technology so well in those small places that they can write American websites. Most people don't even know that relationship exists.
Bulgaria is a huge area for that. Bulgaria, Estonia being one of the most technologically advanced places on earth, actually. Yeah, but definitely Bulgaria as well as Estonia, as former Soviet bloc countries, are well ahead. So I do support that notion that you're saying. But I'll throw something into the works right here. There's a book, I do not remember the author's name, but what I remember is his point of view. And his point of view is this, that there are going to be three blocks in the future, around 10 years or so from now. And the first block will be Chinese influenced countries. The second block, right? Second block would be Euro influenced countries, but they wouldn't be as important as they are now. And those would be really just the Euro bloc, because Europe itself is losing its influence. We haven't even spoken about that, but the EU is losing its influence globally. Interestingly, that's what's driving Emmanuel Macron, the French president, to speak very much out of term of late, although he's not even the chair of the bloc this year. It's the prime minister from Finland. But anyways, and then there's the American bloc. Now, the question is that where does the American bloc exist then? And apparently a lot of it will just be countries that are just around the United States of America, so the neighbors.
Go down to, well, do you think it'd go down to Central America?
Well, they're saying probably just Central America, really, and Canada would be still influenced. Ironically, people don't recognize this, huh? Here's something, Yusef, I mentioned this to you a time we were chatting at my apartment in Sao Paulo, but I'll bring it back up now. The Caribbean is actually the most important region when it comes to the UN. And that's why we get a lot of aid and attention from the UN. With respect to votes, China, there's even a battleground here now with respect to China and Taiwan. So I don't know if people recognize this, but of late, and I know this is slightly off topic, Taiwan has been losing its support. And there are three countries here in the English-speaking Caribbean. Just three of us. Three out of, there's about 32 of us, right? So about three of us here in the Caribbean are recognizing Taiwan. Interestingly, everybody else recognizes China. And they spend an extraordinary amount of money in aid down here. If you drive in any country that supports Taiwan right now, their roads are probably better than anything you can see in the United States right now. Their roads and some of their infrastructure. So like the Caribbean itself has a huge amount of votes. Remember, it's a voter country. And there are tons of countries in this small sub-region. It's a relatively small area to conquer. So you can get something like close to 60 votes at the UN in a small area that is smaller than the state of Texas if you put it together, right? So a lot of influence happens in this region. And the question is that in this future that this guy's predicting in 10 years, does the Caribbean as a bloc move towards China, who's been given an extraordinary amount of aid? The IMF hasn't traditionally been helpful. And there's a general negative feeling towards the IMF, although of late people have been taking their money here. The Chinese have a lot of aid, but luckily we haven't been taking the kind of loans that are tied to infrastructure, like what happened in Sri Lanka there the other day, where airport was seized because it was built using Chinese money, and the government there fell behind on its payments. And that happened as well in some East African countries, if I remember. I don't have a particular case in mind.
I think it was Kenya. Yes.
Right. Airport was seized. Thank you.
Exactly.
I just didn't want to say the country because I couldn't remember. Now, the question in the Caribbean, insofar, we've been a little more judicious with what we take money from China for. But who's to say in the future that still remains the same case? And then does America lose with respect to having influence in the region and also influence at the UN? Because if China could buy 60 votes, that outpaces America's one, right? By far. And that's more countries, and that's more countries per square mile than in South America and in Central America.
Right.
A quick side note to give
60 little islands,
Jeremy, a quick note to give people a context on the importance of Taiwan. Taiwan has fought for independence from China for a very long time. And I'll give you an example of just how powerful that conversation is. When I went to China, we had a first day debriefing saying, we hope you love China. We hope you enjoy the food, have fun with the music, meeting people. Here are a list of words that will find you on an airplane within hours. And they were very short. But on that list was Taiwan, Tiananmen Square. There are a couple. Now, here's what's interesting. I know someone who was working in China. She had something she was talking about, and they talked about different countries they visited. And she said, oh, I visited Russia, and I visited blah, blah, and I visited Taiwan. And someone said, oh, well, Taiwan's not really a country. She said, oh, well, I got a passport stamp there. And then she went on to list a couple other places. She didn't even make it to lunch.
Ooh.
She was on her way to an airport.
Wow.
Ooh. They treat dissidents very, 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 very nastily. Whoa, sorry to laugh, but that's harsh.
Yep.
But you see, in this three block future, that's the question, you know, who gets the influence? And ironically, because of China's, okay, so let me put it another way. The blocks are defined by political ideologies more so than the country's economic strength.
Mm-hmm.
So with China, it's centralism. So it's all about central authority with China. There's more of a neoliberal government with Europe in their bloc, and the States is like a hybrid between the two. The thinking is that this guy believes that people are going to move more towards communist models. Countries are going to move more towards central government in the future. And that's going to expand China's influence in the sub-region. People are going to start looking at these communist countries or countries with very strong parts of central planning and say to themselves, these models work. Because if you look at Singapore is just one step away from democracy, but definitely 2 feet and more into central planning. If you look at Indonesia, same thing.
Who started Singapore? What do these countries all need to be established?
Well, strong leaders, but definitely.
Oh, that's a nice way to say it.
But that's how we say it here. But you will see countries actually looking towards that model as a model that works. Because right now, democracy as a model has, and I don't want to say failed, but definitely underperformed over the last 50 years tremendously. It has masked corruption. Corruption still exists, but it masked it under the design of votes by committee or decisions by committee. But then, you know, in China, things are centrally planned. Corruption may be an issue, but it definitely is dealt with. Singapore, same thing. Sorry?
They execute people in China. China's one of those countries,
exactly.
Dirty businessmen. Like, you can do what you want as long as you defer to the government. But if they find out that the government's, if no one gets to stick their hand in anybody else's pocket except the government, if they find out you have it, they will throw a rope over a tree.
And Rwanda, for instance, Rwanda and Ethiopia right now are the shining lights of Africa in terms of growth. Not necessarily where they are, but in terms of growth. And ironically, Ethiopia's path has been heavily funded by China. Number one. Number two, all right. So Roxana, correct me on that one then. Right?
No, I'm agreeing with you. I'm agreeing with you. I'm upset. Right? I'm agreeing with you.
Right. Okay. Okay. So then it's been funded by China, but Rwanda's story is interesting. Under their president, I always forget his name. I can't remember the actual name right now. Kagame? Can't remember. Paul Kagame. He, although I might be pronouncing it wrong, but he basically uses the Singapore model of governance, which is very much centrally planned as well too. And Rwanda is like the shining light of Africa in terms of development right now. And more countries are going to somehow turn towards that. And as a result, Kagame, right? So my memory's working. But those guys are going to heavily influence how the sub-region of Africa, they treat Africa as that part, Eastern Africa as a sub-region, is going to be run in the next 20 years or so, and it's going to spread. More and more countries are going to call for central planning and strong accountability, and that plays into China's hands. That's my long story. That's my long story, but it means then that the United States will have, again, this is the question, to find a new way to retain that influence, and it has to be more than just money. I don't know what else they can do, to be honest.
I disagree.
I don't know if it's innovation. I don't know if it's technology.
I think everything is money, and I think the way that they do it, if I'm in the United States government, which I'm not, nobody's going to call me and ask. But what I believe could happen is, again, focusing inward when we address the glaring elephant in the room of the education and wealth disparity, which are the same thing, right? When we address our own central issues, when you get the Philippine president, whose name I can't say now, damn it, too many presidents. He gave.
I know his name, but it's slipping my tongue.
I don't remember.
He doesn't like America.
Yeah, absolutely. He doesn't. Yeah, you got that right, Rosanna. You got that right. Yeah.
Other countries have said that you will never. By the way, let me be clear. His name is Rodrigo Duterte. I've read a lot about him. The dude, guy is dressed. He's a juggernaut. And what's the most interesting thing about him is, despite what people say, there's been no political corruption to get him in office. The people love him, and this dude is a monster. This dude's a monster. I mean, he has reputations of going out at night with the police, killing drug dealers. He has a reputation because his family ran a city for many years. He was a governor for like 20 or 30 years, kept getting reelected. People could come to his house on Sunday with regular people problems, and he would do what he can to fix them. Non-government people, he said there was a lady came to his house crying about her husband's drinking. He personally called the dude and said, "Do you know who I am?" But here's the thing he said about the United States and where the United States loses what little ethical cachet it may have had. He said, killing black people, they're shooting them down when they're already on the ground. He straight up attacks the United States and says, listen, when you stop murdering black people, you can talk to the rest of the world about how they should behave.
No, keep that in mind.
Yeah, I loved him for that statement. He's right. Pot calling the kettle black.
Yeah.
Yep. No pun intended.
Yeah. Exactly. No pun intended.
Just to let you guys know, I'm afraid to say that just the other day, meaning I think in fact it was yesterday, we had this incident involving the police, and I'm sure you guys are aware that the police force in Brazil is as assassins as any other mafia mob in the world. Just killed 8-year-old young lady, shooting her in the back. She was inside his school van, and just like that, and she got killed. There's this outrage in Brazil regarding this incident. So we're not any better than the U.S. when it comes to
wait.
the police killing.
This is in Sao Paulo?
In Rio.
In Sao Paulo?
Rio de Janeiro.
In Rio.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's harsh. That is even harsher to me than if it was in Sao Paulo.
And the president, has amped up that rhetoric just like Trump has done in the United States. I'm sure your hate crimes are up more because the president is given free license, just like in the United States.
Exactly.
That president is a demon like Trump. Him and Trump are devils together.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. You can say that again, Rosanna.
He's burning. Look what he's doing to the Amazon. Those forest fires are intentional in the Amazon. Those are intentional. That's not an accident.
I want to do a few things in order. First, I want to address what you said, and I want you to tell me, is this what you're talking about?
No. Yeah, that's the one. That's the one. The beautiful young lady, 8 years old, shot in the back. Just like that. It's.
Can you read that headline?
It's outrageous. It's just. I cannot.
Can you read that for us?
Say what?
Can you read that for us?
Sure. Hang on. Let me get the. Can you send me that link, or because the images just disappeared from the screen? But I can.
Okay. I'll send the link. And then I'm going to go. I want to address while we look at that. We can come back to that after you've had a chance to look at it. I'd like to go back to. Let's see. Hold on. Maybe I can put that back on the screen. I didn't know that it disappeared. There. Can you see it again?
Hang on. Let me check.
Yep. Whoa.
Oh yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Could be my daughter. Could be your sister. Could be. Yeah. Hang on.
So I just want you to give us that title.
Oh, just the title?
Yeah.
Goes like A child who's shot in the back dies in a Complexo do Alemão, which is a neighborhood, a dangerous neighborhood in Rio de Janeiro. And the inhabitants of the region are protesting and demonstrating against the incident.
Yeah.
I think I have okay, I have something. Can you
that
guys?
word moro, what does that word mean? Moro and moradores. Morena, as in brown people are protesting?
The residents.
Okay.
Look at this link. Let me share this link to you guys so you can follow that in English. You see that?
Hold on, I'm putting it up
in a private chat. Yeah, if you can.
Whenever I go into the private chat, I get kicked out, so I don't want to go.
I don't know why.
Okay, Yusef, can you share that for the?
Yep, hold on.
Okay.
8-year-old child shot dead by police in Rio favela. Agatha Felix was inside a van in Complexo de Alemão when she was shot in the back by a rifle. It's not the governor or the mayor's family or the police who are crying. It's mine, said the girl's grandfather.
A rifle, damn.
Exactly, which is again using war.
That's excessive.
Man, you'll be surprised, brother. You'll be surprised if you.
I've never been to Rio, man, but a shotgun is a shotgun as far as I'm concerned.
Let's put it that way. Lower your expectation when it comes to black people living there. Just like that,
I hear that.
Oh man, brother, it's disgusting. It is absolutely.
And a lot of those neighborhoods, like American poverty-stricken neighborhoods, when you go to those neighborhoods, there's no justice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So let me back up. I want to address something Adrian said. Roxanne, can you read that for us? What Adrian put on the screen?
I have to go, but something to consider about economics. The strength of an economy is the ability to control you internally. China has no internal market. Its economy is based upon exports.
And then don't underestimate the reality that a technology-driven economy has replaced a commodity-driven economy as the engine of the world economy. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
China has a
creativity. Okay. All right.
China has a creative and innovation problem. Centralized economies do not liberate the creative innovation of a society, which is why reverse engineering and stealing technology drives the economy. My goodness, Adrian, I hope you are still watching because I'm about to go in on this one. I lived in China for many years, for 2 or 3. Let's not say many years. I can tell you what he said is spot on. Adrian is 100% correct. Here is the beautiful thing about China. You can get anything you want there and get it done cheaply. The terrible thing about China is they can't invent anything, because when you have a system that is based in a central, strong government model where there's no individualism, you can't think of anything. A lot of people get, as much as they criticize the American way of doing things with the cutthroat American economy, and I'm going to talk more about that another time, that cutthroat economy is why we have nice things in the world. Show me another country that's innovating anything from technology to engineering the way we are. Countries that have that safe model, they can't invent anything because they're not allowed to think. Consider my friend who was thrown out of a country for mentioning the name of a country that they didn't agree with because they don't socially agree with it. Now, I'm not telling you America's great, but at the very least, we can freely interact with ideas 99% of the time without fear of reprisal. Consider that in China, I would have parties at my house everywhere I've gone. People know I'm going to have a get together and, play some fun music and introduce people to each other. One of my Chinese friends had to really sit me down afterwards. And I said, it felt awkward, even though everybody enjoyed the food and laughed. But my Chinese friend who's traveled the world, he says, Wateef, you have to understand, the foreigners there grew up in a situation where they could speak freely on everything they wanted. Here, they don't know if somebody at this party is going to snitch them out to the cops. And I was like, I never thought about that. You won't get in trouble for saying anything you want, or maybe you'll be asked to leave. These people can get disappeared. Imagine what happened from what I've read about Chernobyl. And hey, what's up, Dave? And Bo Ray, glad to see you guys on the team. We're just having a great discussion. Dave, you're welcome to come up if you want to discuss the article that I sent you. Bo, I'll send you the article if you want to come up and discuss it with us. Let me put a. I can't type. I can't do two things at once, though.
By the way, so can I address, well, from my point of view, Adrian's contribution?
Yeah.
All right. So check this out. I'll say one thing and one thing only. You don't have to be the creative engine. You just have to own it. Let me give you a good example. Who makes more money off of reggae music? Jamaica or the United States of America?
Probably the U.S. I would imagine.
The U.S. Because the U.S. has the structures by which they're able to mobilize that music to the rest of the world. It has the legal structures and all of that stuff. There's a model the Europeans invented called mercantilism, right? And in the southern United States of America, Brazil, ironically, my little time in Sao Paulo, I picked up that mercantilism was the bedrock of Brazilian society. I never discussed this with you yourself, but literally there's certain things I saw. There's certain things. I'll define it.
You have to tell them what mercantilism is.
Yeah, no, I'll define it. But I'm saying, but just to give context in a sense, there's certain things I saw Black Brazilians doing that seems so Bajan to me, right? That I used to smile in terms of things that we just do with our own creativity that made no sense to me here and makes no sense to me there. So mercantilism is an economic system, right? That says where the raw materials are, we will never allow the people to finish those raw materials. So you take the raw materials, you ship them to the mother country produces the stuff. So sugar is a classic case of sugar and coffee in our parts of the world. It's a classic case of mercantilism. You do not find anything more than probably, let's say, the raw material and being able to change that raw material to something that's a bit finished. So sugarcane being converted to sugar is all we did. We never used to package it. It would always be packaged and selected and marketed in England. Same thing with respect to when the United States was just a set of colonies. Coffee and whatnot was sent to England to be manufactured and shipped out. So mercantilism happens today in technology. In the field of technology, think about it for a moment. The United States of America is not the largest country in the world, but early up front, it invested, it allowed technological innovation to happen. And back in like 1999, you began hearing conversations in the tech area, in tech field that said, we shouldn't worry too much about services. What we need to do is to invest in infrastructure and create platforms that allow people to utilize things. So like case in point, StreamYard that we're streaming on, the coding that is used here to make this service, most of these guys didn't invent that code. They probably pieced together different bits of codes to come with this streaming solution. The storage of this information, however, is on servers that are in primarily the United States of America. So a long time ago, the states decided we would be where people need to send data to be processed. A long time ago. Most of the innovation that you see online now, Afro beats, like Africa right now is popping across like all kinds of music. Popping. Brazil is on the come up as well in terms of some of the hybrids I've been hearing down there. But yet, most of the way that it reaches the people in that same country, Brazil, Africa and whatnot, depends on American solutions. So most of the creativity is happening outside, and you're seeing it with the States. So for me, I don't really believe a country has to be creative. A country just has to own the creativity. And if China is adamant,
I believe
that they're going to own it,
you've got to own the tools. You've got to have the tools in your hand. Owning it is good, but you have to have that as an asset. But let me back up. I want to talk about Brother David here. He just said two things that I wish he was on with us right now. He said if Jamaica was producing software and computer chips versus reggae music and tourism, it would be a major player relative to its size, is Adrian's point. And that may or may not.
Baby, not really. It would be exporting. Adrian's point is that the strength has to do with internal dynamics. Like, people have to be able to consume. Like Brazil can be a strong economy if it didn't have the racial issues, and also if it just didn't have the racial issues. because people would have been more educated across Brazil and they would have been able to consume more. Brazil is self-sufficient, as you know. Brazil does not have to import anything from anybody.
No,
so
Brazil
like,
is an amazing country.
Right, that's a strong economy according to Adrian's definition. Jamaica can't do that. I've been to Jamaica. David might have grown up there, but Jamaica is just a larger version of Barbados. There's no way we can be self-sufficient.
He's a global American. He's one of the people that I wish we could all sit down. David's an American. He traveled the world.
Did we speak? This is the same guy that called me in Brazil when you were on the phone? When you were at my apartment?
This is Dave.
Ah, not Dave. Okay, hey, Dave. Yeah. But no, man, Jamaica, no. Reggae music and marijuana probably the best things that ever happened to Jamaica. Yes, I would love Jamaica to innovate more with respect to tech. It has an Amazon. Amazon actually has a base there as well, believe it or not. And in Antigua, which is an island, Amazon has a. It's not big, but it's been hiring a lot of people out in like Montego Bay, the Montego Bay, Ochi area, so like northern Jamaica. There's none down in Kingston. Right. Jamaica's actually on the come up, believe it or not. It's been pretty strong of late. They will do well.
And now here's something Dave often talks about. I want to go down this road. This is something Dave really opened my eyes to. He said this phrase to me many times. He said the USA has a secret weapon called the HB1 visa. My goodness.
Agreed.
The HB1 visa is a monster. Who's familiar with the HB1 visa?
I am.
Tell them what the HB1 visa is.
Isn't that the working visa to work in the United States?
Oh, it's a special one.
For very skilled individuals and extraordinary individuals.
Workers. Yes, exactly. You got that right, Jeremy.
So many different effects on the way the world and the way the world market runs. First, let me give everybody a quick definition. The H-1B visa in the United States under the Immigration and Nationality Act, Section 101A15H, that allows U.S. employees to temporarily employ foreign workers in specialty occupations. Now, here's the thing. That specialty occupations, those last two words are what give this thing so much power. People don't realize, first and foremost, your top companies in America, I would say 50% or more of those engineers, 50% or more innovators, 50% or more of all the people that do all the heavy lifting with as far as having extraordinarily advanced education, they're not American. The smartest Chinese people in the world aren't in China. They're in American companies. They're in Apple. The smartest people in Mexico, they're not in Mexico. They're working for Netflix. The smartest people from all over the world will apply for that visa. So what ends up happening is we deal with an issue called brain drain all over the world, which I would argue that Roxana and I are a product of brain drain from the United States, where the best, brightest, most opportune, smartest people, learn very early where they can optimize that and just go live someplace else. And it stops those countries where they were born from benefiting from it. So what ends up happening? The United States. Okay, I was born in the United States. I'm an American. But I realized I could work really hard in America and have an upper middle class life, or go any place else in the world with the level of education and business acumen that I have and lead an extraordinarily good life. Brain drain. The immigration of highly trained or intelligent people from a particular country. So what does that mean? Now, do I get a special dispensation because I'm Black? Yes. I'm going to play the race card here, people. Anyone who was not the child of an immigrant who came with a slave has no ethical responsibility to stay where they are. You go where you can get your best life. But I can tell you, it doesn't help America when I have cousins coming out of university not doing what I did, where I spent, I always preach 10 years behind the mast, 10 years rowing the boat of learning corporate America. Before you leave, I have cousins coming out of university on day one. They're like, I didn't even open any job offers from the United States. I'm leaving tomorrow morning. Look at what they said. Nigeria's most talented geniuses are in the United States making big money for Global Pan America Incorporated. Yeah. India, China, Japan, Korea, Israeli, Jamaican top folks are here in the USA. That's some gospel right there. That's secret. And I've watched so many videos of people trying to get that HB1 visa. They would literally eat their own children because it represents that much to them. Because the majority of people will never get close. I mean, people who are geniuses, who are in the top 1% of everything they did, still don't qualify for it. But when they do,
And the irony is,
go ahead.
the irony in my view is that that's the American competitive advantage for now. Because many people, the language is a major thing. The fact that English is still lingua franca across the globe still makes America a very compelling jurisdiction for many persons.
Let me back up.
Like myself.
Let me break that down for a few people. English is the world's second language.
Basically, yeah. But a lingua franca is also unofficial, so it's not official.
Well, that's
so right. So the thing is this. America remains compelling because yes, there are a few shortages in very special areas. So still there's a shortage of engineers. I couldn't even believe that when I read that the other day. I read something from the World Bank that said that America still has a shortage in specialty areas related to technology, and I couldn't believe it. So as long as that exists, then America can still be, the US can still influence global affairs, basically by retaining top talent. But for me, that's not even enough in the near term. It's not enough because at the end of the day, who's responsible for educating most of this talent? The same countries that China is going after. And that's the catch. If you can catch them and sell China as a place to come, you know, or argument's sake, that Eastern Africa or Western Africa are places to go and work, then you've won the battle before the war of that H-1B visa. If I came up thinking, for instance, that number one, I can go to university for free in China, which is the case, or I can go university for free in Brazil, which is the case in terms of state universities in Brazil, then if it is that my degree can lead me to something that gives me a good quality of life from those countries, that's the path that I would take. And sadly, you know,
I just had something hit my brain. Duval.
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, you were playing on your phone.
No, I'm answering my son. He's asking me a few questions here, but you know.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
How old is he?
Huh?
How old is he?
25.
Well, he can come to the conversation. He's big enough to have.
He's far off with his girlfriend now. He's asking me for money. You know.
Oh,
you know, yeah. So sorry about that.
I have what might be a brilliant idea, and I think this may also apply to Roxana. What if we could set up a situation or a pipeline to brain drain, to just straight up poach and steal some of the best and brightest Black high school graduates and say, what if I could get you into another country to go to university for free? Do you think that is that possible? If we could set up a program that said, because I'll give you an example. I have a friend, 2 beautiful daughters. Her daughters are 8. And she said, you know, they're taking a second language in school and they wanted to study French, but they're studying Spanish. And she sounded disappointed. I said, well, do you understand the opportunities that opens for them speaking Spanish? She said, well, yeah, they can go to Mexico or something like that, or Spain. I said, no, you're not thinking. What happens when your daughters graduate high school? What happens if they start taking proficiency exams in high school, sophomore, freshman year? What happens the day they graduate when they're completely fluent and they can apply to universities anywhere in the world where Spanish is spoken and get a scholarship to go for free? As 2 American women who are bilingual at 18 or 19 years old, taking advantage of education systems in other countries, and she hadn't thought about that.
That's the program that we're on. That's right. Being multilingual, the opportunities are infinite. Absolutely. And I wish more people would realize it. The importance of being able to speak different languages.
I can better tell, Roxana. You are absolutely right.
I still have this naive belief that language might be the way out for Black Americans because it's something that's cheap, if not free to learn, but opens your brain in a way, it opens your opportunities in a way that nothing else does. If we could get just a 1 or 2 generations of children that spoke some other language and let that open the world up for them, my goodness.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I know 2 Black Americans that speak fluent Mandarin Chinese. I know a couple, but the 2 I'm talking about, their life is just, I mean, it's on a whole different level. They just showed up in China and just started making money and making friends. It was hilarious.
You're there.
And I just wonder, is that a pipe dream, or is that something? Because when we talk about America, going back to our original topic about the United States intervening during an economy crash or during a recession, I can tell you, having access to another language means when the economy starts going to crap where you are, you can just hit that eject button and say, well, listen, I'm gonna go on and take this certification I have because I'm fluent in another language, and I'll be over here while everybody else is picking up the pieces. Dave, how dare you say that? How dare you? BK from the Rockies. YusefWateef, that's a great point about being bilingual, opening tons of doors and opportunities. However, most people don't have a broad picture of life and of the world, unfortunately.
It is very true. My greatest regret is that I never became fluent in Spanish and French. Although I can speak them enough to get by. That's my greatest regret, honest to God. Because there's so many things I could have done outside of just my small area of the Caribbean. And now I have to be forced, because of Yusef and his lovely wife, to learn Portuguese.
So my question is, BK, is how do we fix that? How do we fix that? I mean,
how?
Yeah,
that's where the Black Wall Street model comes to play, man. You provide that service. Do some classes on Udemy. Start marketing to Black children. You know, do a Khan Academy class. Like, just make it a social service.
Yep.
Somebody has to sacrifice. This can't be a money-making initiative. For some reason, it just wouldn't work.
I've written extensively and talked extensively and even put on my YusefWateef.com page extensively about MOOCs, MOOC, massive open online courses, and how that was a secret weapon of mine when I decided to go heavily into Bitcoin. I don't know. Is that something that Brazilians know about? Because I've introduced a few Brazilians to it, and they have gone crazy just taking advantage of how it works. Are you familiar with it?
I confess, I'm not that familiar with that. I've heard about it, but I'm not familiar with that in depth.
Okay, well, I wrote an article. I'll show you. It's called Retro Learning, but it's about something called a MOOC, MOOC, Massive Open Online Course. A long time ago, you could actually audit a class by sitting in the back of the classroom that you weren't registered for at a university. Well, what did professors start doing? They record their classes, write up a few of the exams and quizzes, and scan them online, and you can go to places like one of my favorites, Udemy.
Stanford.
You know, Udemy has a wealth of things. And by the way, I don't have any kind of a code for Udemy. I'm not telling people to go to Udemy because I make any money. But what do you want to learn? Let's just say, I don't know, Bitcoin. It could be anything. It could be another language. It could be code. You can go here and find a bunch of classes.
Wow, look at that.
Look at that. That are cheap, or if you're, let's just say you're a student. Let's just say you don't have that kind of money in your life. You don't have $40 to spend free with a 4.5 rating and 2.7. A lot of people use this and they'll say, take my introductory course, take my level 1 and my level 2, and then when you make some money, come back and pay for 4, 5, and 6, but I'm going to get you started. These things make a whole lot of people better off in life.
Agreed.
Wow.
Agreed. Well, Seth, I'm going to have to depart right now. Okay. But definitely, this was a great conversation, man. I enjoyed this one definitely more than when I was sitting next to you.
How dare you? Well, listen, we're going to wrap the show, and I'm going to close it off with BK from the Rockies saying, great question. I think the problem lies in people's standards. We have to find a way to increase the standards of people to think outside of their neighborhoods and think worldly. Wow. Again, that's a simple truth. That's a simple truth. I love you guys. Thank you all. Oh, by the way, let me go back. When I told everybody that I don't make any money off of doing I don't make any money off YouTube. I don't make any money off Google. I'm an editor, copywriter, proofreader, people who need things done in university level English. Let's say you have a book that needs to be proofread or copywritten proofread or edited to university level English. People bring me documents that were in Portuguese. I'll translate the document into English. through one of the people in my company, and then we bring that to university level English. I do some teaching with executives who need to sound as educated in English as they are in their own language. And for people who want to connect with me, find out more about what I do, hire me for projects, this is the best way to catch me, is either here online, or if you want to catch me on LinkedIn, you can always add me there. I write resumes. That's probably one of my biggest in-demand services. I write resumes for people.
Good.
So,
let me ask you this, brother Yusef. When are we gonna have the next one? I love this. It was quite an experience, and to have a chance to meet my brother Jeremy and Rosanna and all the people. So I'm eager to have the next one. When is that gonna be?
Well, you know, I try to do this one or two times a week. I do a lot of them with individuals. First, are you subscribed to my channel?
I will. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I will.
All right, I'm gonna subscribe to that, and then I'll make sure. Dave said I need to sell T-shirts and turn on the super chat for donations. Well, here's why I don't want to do that though, because once you do something like that through their service, you become subject to their exacting standards.
Right.
I don't ever want to be demonetized. I don't ever want to go to anybody else for money. But having said that, we can stand here and talk for it. Jeremy, thank you so much.
No problem, man. It's been amazing as always.
And we miss Roxana and we miss Daniel. And I hope everybody has a great day. You're going to see every podcast pop up on your screen. I never can tell exactly